Yeah, I have a question, but can you hear me?
Yes, Paula, yes, you can go ahead, ask a question.
Okay, we talk about the problems ADHD, ADHD, and we talk about creating a positive environment for a person who has this disorder. But I'm wondering if we didn't recognize this problem at the time, uh, can we talk about danger of ADHD turning into a harder problem? You know, something like depression or something like another problem with suicide thoughts, and you know, is
Yeah,
there a possibility for this?
it's a huge problem. My particular focus, I run a website called Dyslexia Bites, and my particular focus is on dyslexia, but I also, obviously, I focus on other neurodiversities. And what we know is that those people who are neurodiverse are hugely more likely to be, first of all, to end up in prison, to end up with mental health problems, and to end up homeless. We know this. We also know they're very much more likely to end up at the bottom of the income spectrum. The reason is effectively a couple of things. There's three things that go on. Where we fail to deal with oppositional behavior, where we fail to deal with the needs, the physical needs of children, this starts to build up into all sorts of internalized stress, and that builds into anger. And especially with the people with ADHD who have got anger and anxiety and oppositional behavior, this increases it an awful lot. There are two really interesting phenomena that we have to be very careful of. One is called the Matthew effect. It comes from the Gospel of St. Matthew, interestingly enough. The parable of the Minas, if anyone's read the Gospel of Matthew recently, which I guess you haven't. But this parable is effectively, we put it in terms of the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Let's take dyslexia as a very easy example. If we teach through reading and writing, so lots of stuff written on a board, and you have to read it and copy it down, and if this is how we teach, people with dyslexia will not be able to get as much information as quickly as others. And so within every 1 hour section, or within every lesson, let's say, a neurotypical child will get 3 pieces of information. But for that 1 hour session, the dyslexic child has only got 1 piece of information. From that moment on, for every piece of information, the neurotypical child gets 3 more pieces of information, because they read more, they understand more, they go deeper, and their knowledge broadens and deepens. The dyslexic person gets 1 more piece of information. And relatively, the gap widens exponentially. So that's one of the things. It's a feeling of alienation from school. And I had this, by the way. I was horribly alienated at school. I felt that I could do nothing. And one of the reasons is everybody was learning so much, and I was learning so much slower. And my learning was a lot narrower, simply because the methods of teaching relied on things that I couldn't do. Melita, you've just asked a very interesting question. I'll come back to this in a second. The second phenomenon we deal with is called learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is a really big thing in schools. Very quickly, if you give children tasks they cannot perform, they will become used to not doing things. There was a very famous test. It's on the internet. You can watch it. It's really interesting. An educational psychologist went into a class of 17-year-olds by the looks of it. I don't know exactly how old they were, but most of them looked sort of 16, 17, 18. So they were old students. They weren't young children. And she gave them a task, and she split the group into 2 groups. The task is a very simple very simple task, to solve an anagram. And the first group, 1/2 of the class, had 3 anagrams they had to solve. The second group had 3 anagrams. And the task was solve anagram number 1. And for the first group, the anagram was easy and they solved it really quickly and they all put their hands up. The second group, the anagram was impossible. They couldn't solve it. None of them put their hands up. The psychologist then said, okay, now solve anagram number 2. For the first group, the anagram was really easy. They all put their hands up. The second group, it was an impossible anagram. They couldn't do it. None of them put their hands up. Then the psychologist said, okay, solve anagram number 3. Anagram number 3 was the same word. Group 1 and group 2 each had the same word. Group 1 could answer it, group 2 couldn't answer it. They had become unable to do an anagram within about 5 minutes. It's called learned helplessness. What we do at school is we risk imposing learned helplessness. There is indeed, there's a number of really good ones. Is this the, I don't know which this one is. Is this the one on the school where the psychologist splits the group into two sections? It might be, I'm not certain. So what we do is, and I urge you all to watch this video that was shared. Thank you. We have to be careful of the Matthew effect and of learned helplessness. These two things alienate people from school. There's also a question that was asked. So let's have a look at this question. This is a really interesting question. How can we as teachers deal with parents who do not want to accept that their child has a problem? What do we suggest? The simple answer is we are not diagnosticians. So we don't have to show that anyone has a problem. All we do is we start to give people spiky profiles. This child can do this very well, not so well. This very well, not so well. This very well, not so well. As a group, we are a diverse group. Some children can do these things well, but not these things. Some children can do these things well, but not these things. And as long as we communicate what children can do, we communicate in terms of their skills and what they can do, rather than labeling them. Because it's not our job to label them. It's our job to understand what these things might be and work out strategies so that we don't need to label them anymore. And so my answer is we don't have to talk to the parents about a child being autistic or a child having ADHD or a child being dyslexic. As long as what we do is we fix our teaching in such a way that it's diverse, because we have groups of diverse children. I hope that answers the question. If it doesn't, please add something to it.
Hello, thank you. It's Melita. Thank you for the question, for the answer. Sorry, and thank you for sharing your knowledge, experience,
Pleasure.
and everything else with us. I think someone else mic is turned on because I hear myself also. Yeah, nice, good. So I wanted just to add, thank you for the answer, and that is true. We are not there to diagnose. We are not. We're just teachers, right? But since, for example, I have a student who is really brilliant-minded, who can learn a lot of things, and he's doing his tasks, everything that we told him to do as teachers. But he has a lack of concentration. There are some things that he just cannot do because he, for example, giving him an I don't know, like write an essay where he has to imagine something that is mission impossible for him. But doing the math, doing good biology or geography, everything that he can see, feel, touch, that is good. And some things he won't just be able to do in his life, unfortunately. And his parents, when we try to will point out to things like that, to where to show him which way to go, they were like, no, he's fine. And then we're just, it's a setback. And him, when he can do something, he gets frustrated, which is, I mean, everybody gets frustrated when we can do something, but he is just showing, in some. So how can what to do with him, how to guide him, and to show also the parents that they have to be there for him, in a sense that they should not force him to do something that he can do it. How can we manage? It's hard, but we are there. We spend a lot of time with them in the classrooms. How can we do something just to guide, not to say to parents, there is not even one parent in the whole planet that wants to hear that something's wrong with his child, right? But how can we just say, like, okay, can you just guide him a little bit or work with him or this? And, you know, he is not very well in that. How can we do that? Do you have any experience with that? I assume you have.
Thank you for the question, Lisa. I really appreciate that. I would attack it from two angles. Initially, my initial thoughts are to attack this from two angles. The first is what we call the attitude angle. Now, attitude comes in two forms. The first of the attitude is how we look at the completion of certain tasks. Is it important that everybody gets everything right, or is it important that we focus on the strengths or the weaknesses or whatever? So one aspect of attitude is the classic sort of emotional, psychological aspect of attitude. But the other aspect is, I'm a great believer in what philosophers call voluntarism. That is, there's no such thing as having an attitude unless that's displayed in our actions. So our attitudinal actions, how are we as teachers going to make it obvious that we value the things they can do and the things they can't do are things which that's okay, it doesn't matter to us, and it doesn't matter to the learning. Now, the second aspect, therefore, is that when we teach, we include what we call differentiation. This is something we haven't talked about, but I'm sure you've all heard of differentiation. Differentiation comes in many, many forms. One of the forms of differentiation comes with, you can differentiate a task by, you can differentiate a lesson by task. So some children do some tasks and other children do other tasks. You can differentiate some teaching by objective. So some groups or some children have one objective and some have another objective. You can differentiate. And so the pragmatic attitude comes out in how we differentiate in terms of the teaching that we give, the tasks that we give people, and what we expect them to produce at the end of it as well. It's always possible, by the way, that we don't necessarily have to mark individuals. It's a very strange notion that marking individuals is the only way to mark people. So one of the things we can do is we can set groups, tasks, and each person within this group has a different role within this task. And that if the group gets it right and each person demonstrates that they have fulfilled their role within that group, they've all got it right. But the roles don't have to be the same, and the objectives for each group don't have to be the same. As long as there is a set task that is gradable and that each person within these groups can contribute in a way which we can measure, then suddenly the fact that a child can't do something becomes less important. I don't know whether that answers your question, Melissa. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it has a lot, and it helps a lot. And thank you so much for the answer. It is a wide range topic, so it should be a separate webinar just for this kind of topic. But thank you so much for making it, the summary of it. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Miss. I am very, very aware that, yeah, it's very much like, let's just throw this idea out and then move on. There's little exploration we can do here. So I apologize, but I hope it's helping at least sort of giving you food for thought.
Yes, and I'm sorry to have to say this, but we are now a few minutes past our time, and knowing how busy Martin is, he's a nice guy and he doesn't want to say what else he has to do today and tomorrow. So, I'm just going to make a brief conclusion. I'm going to thank everyone once again. As Martin said, this was just the surface of many things, but I would like to remind everyone that sitting here, we are a group of people in different teaching situations. So I think that what Martin has shown us is, first of all, motivation, inspiration, and I think that there will be time. I would like to remind you that our training program with a number of modules addressing different things is now being developed. So we will be moving on from here, and there will be a lot more to come in the future. So I also would like to remind everyone that the first message in the chat is the link for you to leave your contact in case we don't have it, because some of the people came sort of indirectly, which is fine. Of course, we are still trying to reach people countrywide. So we also want your contacts because of the certificates. We now have, the project has its logo, and we now want to basically record our activities, because there is a lot of energy, there is a lot of motivation, and I'm very excited about the simple thing that now we are doing something which we heard so often in December, like we need something concrete, something practical, something useful. So I'm really happy that we are now on the right track. So thanks for joining us. Martin, thank you very much for your time and everything. And of course, I would like to thank Dale and others from our team, because it was them who also helped this event to go on. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Yubo and Ivan and all the others for organizing this. And thank you, everybody, for giving up your time to come and join today. I know that you've all got things to do as well, so I really appreciate this. And if there's anything you'd like to know, please get in touch with me. Actually, you can certainly find me, and you can look me up on LinkedIn and contact me there as well. So yeah, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Incredible.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye.